as I'm sure you've noticed already. Back on Blog Talk Radio here for today's recording. A little bit easier for me from an editing process. So the day after the Super Bowl, obviously with a lot of things going on and trying to play some catch up here, especially when it comes to Major League Baseball. Doing this on Blog Talk Radio, so not Skype today. Please send me some feedback at Skating Tripods or Adam at BangTheBook.com. Let me know about the audio difference here, if you prefer one way over another, something like that. Again, Blog Talk Radio, a little bit easier for me from an editing process, getting the show up a lot quicker, which does matter a lot more here during the college basketball, NBA, and NHL seasons. But if you want it to be more Skype, I'll try to get on board with my guests for doing that. But please let me know if that's what you want me to do. Also, one other announcement here. No show on Friday. No show next Monday. I'll start the Monday mailbag in 2 weeks as the first segment. So if you've got some questions that you want to start sending over, at Skating Tripods on Twitter or Adam at BangTheBook.com. Speaking of BangTheBook.com, a lot of great stuff going on over there right now, covering NBA, college basketball, NHL on the daily. Alan Moody in NBA, Parker Michaels in NHL, Kyle Hunter in college basketball. Still doing soccer previews, tennis previews. A good one from Big Ten Watto here this week. Then also, still doing, working on my baseball stuff in the background, golf and NASCAR. A lot of things going on. UFC, of course, as well. A lot of stuff going on over at BangTheBook.com, your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio, presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. Two guests on the program here today. We start things off with Joe Everett from NFL Draft Bible and DraftScouts. Joe, how's it going today, man?
Awesome game for me. I cannot complain at all. I actually enjoyed that. Some people complain about low scoring, but I loved every minute of that.
It was interesting because as I'm watching the game, I'm thinking, wow, this blows. Like, this game sucks. And as you reflect on it the next day and kind of after the fact, you know what? It was just a defensive struggle. I mean, yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of great offense being played, but, it was a massive departure from a lot of the Super Bowls we've seen recently. 41-33 last year, 34-28 the year before that. We really haven't had a knockdown, drag-out defensive Super Bowl in a while, and I guess this one just caught some people off guard.
I think the world zigs and Bill Belichick zags. And it's just like you said, last year's Super Bowl and what we expected. And so many people decided mid-season that today's NFL is a completely different world that we live in. And I agree, it looks different. But Bill Belichick got in the DeLorean, took us back to 1986. He went back to the conference championship game. The Giants won against Joe Gibbs' Redskins. Beat them up. They run 12, 22, 23 personnel. We're going to use a fullback, and we're going to line up hat on a hat, beat you up in the running game, play defense. And it was beautiful, I think. And a lot of people will say it's a game planning because I praise his defense so much, the chameleon defense. It's different per opponent. You'll never see the same thing twice, and that's it. But I think this whole plan was built not just by 1 week. This is why I followed the draft. These plans, these tracks were laid in April. The Pats spent 2 first-round picks on Georgia teammates, offensive tackle Isaiah Wynn and Sony Michel, running back. And they asked for this. I mean, they wanted this. They needed another power back to add to the mix. They wanted another lineman to make sure they could pound the rock at the end of all things. When it's go time, the chips are on the table. They wanted to make sure they're not out of ammo. And, they came prepared for the battle of attrition this whole year, not just this week. And they were the better, more healthy team. They're in better shape, and that's what we saw. And I think we broke it down on the last show, prepping for the game. It was kind of, going to be that defensive struggle. And there are a lot of people expecting these, offensive superminds. It was the defensive minds of Belichick and Wade Phillips that shut down the flashy names. And McVay, all credit due. And I still think Josh McDaniels is a phenomenal play caller, but Wade Phillips had his number too on the other side of the ball. And Bill Belichick along with Brian Flores. That defense, it's just never the same front, never the same scheme, and they did quarters again. I think in that they probably played more zone than I've seen them play, but Edelman was the best player on the field. We were talking right before the show started. Special teams won this game. Ryan Allen was amazing. Hecker was super. I set the record for longest punt in Super Bowl history. I think that was a heck of a lucky bounce. But Ryan Allen in the second half was off the chain. 2 punts inside the 10, that one at the 2. Talk about another great bounce. But Jackie Slater's kid, Matt Slater, the gunner on the special teams, this is why Belichick starts those practices off with not the offense, not the defense, but the defense. For a reason. They were so good at that side of the ball, and not to be underestimated. Like you said, Hecker, he was in line for MVP with how well he punted. So it's the difference was Edelman. Austin Blythe, that right guard for the Rams, got exposed in this game. The stunts they ran there. Van Noy and Hightower twisting in those crossfire, the dogs, fire dogs, whatever the play call is on your defense. They run those backers in and split them on, and the linemen just can't account for the extra man. And sometimes it's not even an extra man. They're just running 5. It's just where those 5 are coming from in that sort of mud rush that they've got. Like no one's really lined up. They're standing up at the line. They won that on defense, and I hated to see Jared Goff look so brutal at times, man. Even pregame, I watched it. I'll admit, I watched it 3 times now. Even handshakes in pregame, he's shaking. There was a bad look for Mr. Dre Fogue. Brandon Cooks did not have the game he should have had, and the prevailing thought I had at the end of the game was, what if the Patriots had Josh Gordon? I don't even think it's close.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Patriots had so many chances in the first half to really put a little bit of distance in this game, and they failed to do it. And, of course, still they were just so suffocating on defense. And, just sort of go through some of the things that you were talking about. We talk all about the skill position guys when it comes to the Super Bowl because of the props and because of, both of these teams really loaded with weapons. James White not used pretty much at all by the Patriots. And another one of the big keys, you mentioned Austin Blythe and how it was a tough game for him. Rob Havenstein had his worst game of the season, too. Took a couple of penalties. The Patriots were coming from all angles, and, he really struggled with the pass rush and with, containing his man in this game. And, those can be the keys. Last year it was all about the skill position guys. This year was about the trenches and, as you mentioned, special teams and gunners and, the unheralded types of guys making plays. It was a different kind of Super Bowl, and, it's not what people want to see in the Super Bowl, but, hey, it's what we got. And, something else I want to mention here, a lot of the props that we talked about on the show did come through. Burke had rushing attempts. Robert Woods, depending on the number you got, he fell very, very close to it. I know there was a 69.5 out there. I was able to get 69.5, also got 72.5. He, of course, fell right in the middle of that. Corey Littleton played really well. But, man, the thing that caught me off guard here for the Patriots, they had 30 sacks in the regular season. They had 30 sacks in 16 regular season games. They had 10 in 3 postseason games. They really dialed it up, found weaknesses. That's why this is a team that's had a dynasty.
I don't want to say it as accusatory to some coaches, but they totally didn't show their hold card. Some of those elaborate blitzes, they waited on that. And clearly the Rams weren't ready for it. And how well they played on third down, that set the tone for everything. Like the Rams had some drives, but right there in crunch time, it never failed. If it was Hightower showing up, what amazed me is that it's pretty risky to do a ton of zone against a team with that many playmakers. And even when they had the openings, they closed the gaps. Especially, I was worried when Chung left with that air cast on the elbow. It's like, well, he's completely done, and how's Deron Harmon going to survive out there? And he played well. I mean, that just shows you how good the defensive backs teachers are there, what Belichick, the kind of people he brings in. I mean, they are so bought in. And them closing the gaps in zone like that they did, the secondary also, I thought they played their tails off, especially on third downs. And so, there was so many instances where the Rams were close to a touchdown. If Jared Goff sees Brandon Cooks in the back of the end zone half a second earlier, that's a six that may sway the difference and alter some play calling. And I just, it is, to me, is the people who want to complain about that game, it really was, in my opinion, right down to it until the fourth quarter when the Patriots went on that long last drive that capped off on the touchdown. That's when it was like, wow, the deflating air came out of the bubble then. But I think right up before then, it was anybody's game.
Well, and as we transition to start to look at the offseason here a little bit, you mentioned some exotic blitz packages. The ends played pretty well for New England in this game, and then, of course, freed up the middle of that pass rush for the linebackers to come through, and Van Noy with great closing speed on the sack that he had. You just sort of start looking ahead to the offseason here and start looking at, what teams want to focus on, what these teams want to do with their draft picks or in free agency or things of that sort. And, man, I'll tell you what, this was such a strange game. You had plus territory punts in the first half. You've got, Belichick punting. You've got McVay punting. McVay never should have punted in plus territory here in a game like this. I don't know why he did. But, it seemed to me that, when you look at last year's game, it was about aggression. It was about Doug Peterson and Nick Foles just letting it all hang out. There's a reason he's called Big Dick Nick. It was about aggression. It was about going for it. It was about, being proactive instead of reactive. Then in this game, I think the offenses were reactive. The defenses were proactive. I sort of wonder how that sets up here for this offseason where, last year was all about Peterson and the skill position guys and skill position depth. And then you look at this Super Bowl, and it's all about getting after the quarterback. Because if you get there, it obviously impacts the play. Even when you don't get there. Brady's short-arming some throws, Goff short-arming some throws. Man, if I'm looking in the draft and looking in free agency here, I want dudes that can rush the passer, and I'm loading up on as many of them in my front seven as I can.
And that will be the theme this year's draft. Not only is it littered with pass rushers, but teams, just like you said, they're going to be looking for that answer. And that's, I think, why some of the best teams that continuously do well, not just on defense, but across the board, they address the lines first. When they have priority picks, the high top 100 first and second rounders, they're investing in defensive linemen. They're investing in an offensive lineman. Someone not only they know will max out that contract more than likely and play the length of it and earn a second one, but make the difference. And if you hit on a pass rusher, there's no better coup, because even if he doesn't fit in your system, coach gets fired, you switch schemes. That's such a valuable commodity as to other teams. It's a moving chip there. So I think, the theme of this offseason will be to find pass rushers, to find defensive playmakers, off-ball linebackers. There's actually, free agency. The Cowboys don't sign DeMarcus Lawrence. That might just be the highest-paid player in the league if he makes the open market there. I don't think so. But I think what some of the takeaways that the teams are going to have from this game is committing to that slow burn like the Patriots did in the last two games. You're going to have to, if you're in the AFC, you're going to have to play Mahomes in the playoffs. That's going to happen if you want to make it to the Super Bowl. So what's the way to beat them? Denver gave us the blueprint. The Patriots followed through on it. And it just forces, I think, teams to – it's all well and good to score a bunch of points, but you're going to have to play big boy football at the end of the day. At some point, there's going to be a team that can do it a little bit better than you through the air, and, well, you're going to have to take the air out and kill the clock and shorten that game. Can you do it? And some teams, they're going to be drafting like that. The offensive linemen are going to go a little bit higher in this draft. And I'll just be honest, though, I'm not nuts about the quarterbacks in the group, and it's a super deep wide receiver group. So I don't know that we're going to see all these skill positions go off the board in this year's class. I think just the strength of this year's class will dictate that. It's just so many pass rushers. But also, I think you hit the nail on the head that the need is there, and the difference in how those teams that won in the postseason, that's going to change some thinking and approach to the draft and free agency.
All right, so as we look at the landscape for 2019, the Rams, they're going to be back. What they did in the Super Bowl is probably going to distract some people from really how good they were throughout the regular season. Of course, we can say there is a caveat to that when the Rams stepped up in class this year, they did have some issues, given the teams that they lost to, the teams where they didn't look very good against. But, at the end of the day, the Rams are going to be there in the NFC playoff picture again next year, both because the division's not great and also just because they've got a very, very good, foundation there in place. But as we look at the rest of the NFC, is there a team that, takes that step forward based on some smart draft picks, some smart player acquisitions? Do you feel like there is a challenger that can emerge for this Rams team?
Oh, I think in their same division, we cannot forget about the 49ers. Crazy for Jimmy G. The dream is still alive there, in my opinion. And then the Buccaneers. The boys are back in town. Bruce Arians is huge. I'll start with the Bucs. Granted, offense wasn't a problem for them in Tampa, but closing in the red zone, finishing drives, they had all this yardage and just had nothing to show for it. I just can't count how many of those games would have not only been close, but just flat out in the W column if they had closed the deal. And you know what? B.A. scores. That's one thing we know. He wears a Kango and he scores touchdowns. That wide receiver core fits in exactly what he wants to work with. I don't care if Deshaun Jackson stays or leaves. You know what? Get out so we know what to do. They've got Big Mike. They have a secret stud in Chris Godwin, I think. Adam Humphries is adequate in the slot. O.J. Howard's starting to develop into what we thought. If they address the offensive line, you knew B.A. was going to bring Todd Bowles in on that staff to run the defense. How his scheme fits, especially up front, I don't know. I mean, they got an awful lot of single gappers built for a cover two kind of zone look. And where McCoy fits, where Pierre-Paul, Vin Curry. But I have total confidence that Todd Bowles will fix that defense. They add another edge. They fix that line. I think there's so much to work with the Buccaneers. And, he wrote a book called Quarterback Whisperer. If there's a guy that, if Bruce Arians can't fix Jameis Winston, it's over. It's a wrap. I'll just say that right now. So Jameis backs against the wall. Bruce Arians has something to prove. I love the recipe in Tampa. I think I'll bet a lot of people are probably going to take that season win total over as soon as it's released for the Bucs.
Well, and what's interesting there about the NFC South is you have the Saints, who are the class of the division right now, and now they have 2 years worth of chips on their shoulders when it comes to the playoffs, and deservedly so. Carolina and Atlanta, I don't really know where they're at right now. You've got two good quarterbacks in Cam and Matty Ice. You've got some individual players on both sides of the ball that are very, very solid, but there's some sort of cohesion missing for both of them. You sort of wonder, if Tampa Bay can take advantage of that, maybe slide themselves into a wild card position, something like that. A very interesting division to watch, to be sure. How about the NFC North, Joe? I mean, Chicago, say what you will about Trubisky, but, Matt Nagy is making it work there with him. The defense is clearly elite. Do Minnesota or Green Bay get this thing figured out for 2019? And, is there maybe a player or two that they can look at this offseason in hopes of doing that?
I think Minnesota's closer than a lot of people be willing to bet. That was just a rough season for them. The changeover with Cousins. And then not enough people to talk enough about losing Sperano at a horrible point in the season. Well, it's not only losing a man that young, but right before the season starts, the running game coordinator and a basis a lot of how those plays are called. He tells Filippo what he can and can't call, and they really, I think they'll have their offensive room in order with Stefanski being where he is. Another year removed, hopefully they add another offensive lineman, because right now that is the sore thumb of this team. Dalvin Cook, I do not believe, was healthy all season until the very end. So if they could sort up that front five, get Dalvin Cook healthy again, Cousins year 2 with these receivers. I can't count how many times Thielen and his hands up in the air screaming back at Cousins. Diggs and Cousins didn't seem to have the same kind of chemistry. So I think that second season, now that he's really got that understanding of where they are, they don't even have to talk. It's an unspoken bond this year. I'd look for Minnesota to take the next step, but especially with that defense, where they were at with injuries. I think it's a shame, because I always talk about how deep they are, but man, did the injuries really bite them in the tail. That Xavier Rhodes is another one, best corner in the league, arguably. We could have an argument, but he definitely wasn't playing all healthy all season. Wayne's nicked up. That's the team I look coming back strong. They're going to have their room sorted out. They're going to have their plan intact, and I think Mike Zimmer, with a head of steam, pretty pissed off about how last year went. That's a team I'd be willing to back.
Yeah, I mean, they were without Sendejo and Barr for a while here over the course of the season, too. So that back seven was really, really decimated by injuries up there in Minnesota. So how about the AFC, Joe? I mean, 6 teams win double digits. Those 6 teams go to the playoffs. Houston obviously didn't look great in their playoff appearance, but the Colts look good. The Chargers look pretty decent up until bad scheduling spots got them. Chiefs and Patriots obviously speaks for themselves. I think Baltimore may be kind of the odd one out there, and a lot of steam for the Cleveland Browns for 2019.
Yeah, I have to agree. Danger Mayfield. He should just change his name legally at this point. I think it's awesome. And I think the team should just draft a wide receiver every year until he retires. Add to that offensive line, because at this point it's about him. He's running that show. The best look for them would probably be Alabama's Jonah Williams, maybe Jawan Taylor from Florida if they could afford it. 2 of the top tackles on my board right now. I think that's where they look. I like where the defense is, and it's unfortunate you lose Greg Williams, and they seem to really take to his scheme, but I think they'll be fine with Steve Wilkes. They're in great shape with his, especially in the front 7. They can do the same stuff they're doing. That corner they drafted, Denzel Ward, played his tail off, and another secret star they have, not a secret in Cleveland, I'm sure, but David Njoku is starting to scratch the surface of what he could be. Like, athletically, it's just through the roof of what he could do. It's just figuring out where he is physically. I think it's a guy that's still, like, adjusting to how much ability he has. I'm just dumb as that sounds, man. He could develop into a real great one, and that's going to be a tough tandem to cover, because I don't see a linebacker running with Njoku when he figures out his routes. It's going to be a problem for other teams, and defensively, stopping Baker is going to be an issue. The smartest thing they did, I think, there is keeping Kitchens. The chemistry they have, that is definitely on the other side of the conference. Like we're talking about the Bucs being that buzz team. I think, Cleveland's got a ton of buzz, but rightfully so. That kid, he proved why he's the number 1 pick. He not only backed it up, but the whole city is excited, and for very good reason. He's a star.
Oh, I don't know how many times I heard at the Super Bowl party I was at last night about, the Browns are going to be in this game next year. I don't know if that'll happen, but obviously there is a significant amount of buzz for this team, and it's good to see. I mean, I'm an Indians guy first and foremost, and I always have been, but Sundays are fun again. The Browns are worth watching again. I've got friends that are getting season tickets that probably never would have thought, because growing up, this team was absolutely terrible. I mean, from '99 until virtually now, there wasn't a whole lot to look forward to. There was the one-off season where they made the playoffs, blew a huge lead to the Steelers in the wild card round, and they were one and done. But hey, a lot of people around my age getting a lot of buzz for the team. Obviously, the people that have been there throughout. But Joe, as we look at the rest of the AFC here, I mean, even with Brady on the downside of his career, no one's challenging the Patriots in the East. Maybe the Chargers and Chiefs, kind of seesaw back and forth in the West, but the Broncos and the Raiders aren't ready to catch up there yet. I think Indy with Andrew Luck and what we saw from Frank Reich, they're good to go in the AFC South. Outside of the Browns, who really aren't even that much of a surprise anymore, is there a surprise team possibly in the AFC?
I loved what I saw in Mobile from the Raiders coaching staff, and this is going to sound just bat bleep crazy to some people, but I like what I saw, that energy, and Gruden is still a rock star. I am Kyle Shanahan's biggest friggin' fan. Post-game, in the lobby, Gruden has a crowd, a throng of 40 people. There's 3 dudes talking to Kyle. And I just waltz up to Kyle like, Kyle, buddy. But I tell you, everyone wants to see Gruden. They want to be around him. And the players, those kids, they couldn't stop talking about Gruden, even in interviews. And like, he's slapping stickers on their helmets. They're jumping around. Like, I think he's going to rebuild this team. I know I spent all of last season trashing him because they trashed everything Reggie McKenzie did. But the bottom line is that Gruden's, he's still one of the best schemers there is. That script he dials up pregame is still working. Look at all their opening drives from last year. How many touchdowns they capitalize on in just the initial first series. I think his play calling is still one of the best, and they keep Derek Carr. They got a ton of draft picks, and the players that survived this year one, it was a brutal year one, they're going to have confidence going forward that, hey, he didn't get rid of me by now. I got something going for me. I think year two of Gruden, we not only see a drastic improvement, but he's figuring things out. They're gonna have a whole new look. I think they just add a pass rusher. I know they got rid of one, but they're basically remanaging the books. That's pay anybody, and they're going about not pay anybody in an efficient way. They're adding those draft picks. They're not going to be too active in free agency, and I think the one guy they're going to end up paying, like, they keep Carr around. I like their chances to make some noise. I don't know if they're completely like a postseason team, but, man, there was just a vibe around that whole team that was unmistakable, and, man, Gruden, even if it's not this year, something's there, man. There's a vibe happening, and I wouldn't be surprised. They win a whole lot more games than they did that year. Well, it's not hard to go anywhere but up from where they are, though. That's easy to say.
Well, I mean, at the very least, you talk about teams that you want to look for from an against the spread standpoint, and we kind of thought with the Raiders late in the year, was this them giving a middle finger to the front office and to Gruden about, seemingly tanking to move up in the draft, or maybe this was just a team that actually got a little bit better as the season went along. So I think that's a very good question to ask there with regards to the Raiders. And, of course, two world-class NFL news dumps last week. Absolute world-class. Dallas does the Kristaps Porzingis deal, and somewhere in the process, Jerry Jones works in that Jason Garrett's a lame duck head coach next year because they're not going to give him an extension. And then last night, basically the third quarter of the Super Bowl, so the Raiders are going to play at Oracle Park where the San Francisco Giants play next year. World-class news dumps. Absolutely incredible timing from the Cowboys and Raiders who, obviously are well-versed in, good PR. So, Joe Everett from Adam Draft Bible and Draft Scouts. Joe, what do you got going on right now in terms of looking ahead to the draft?
Oh, I've been doing wide receiver scouting reports all week long, getting ready we've got all the combine announcements coming out, and, of course, at the end of the month, I'll be here in Indy covering the scouting combine, time in 40s at my own watch, but basically in the media room, talking to coaches, GMs will be there, and all the players I can get my hands on before they kick me out of the building anyway. So, yeah, definitely looking forward to the combine.
You can follow Joe's work on Twitter at Joe W. Everett. Joe, it's been a joy this NFL season, as it always is, brother. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll probably do some stuff here in April prior to the draft, but till then, enjoy your writing, man. Enjoy your work, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Oh, most definitely. Love the show. Big fan myself, so I will be listening, and talk to you guys soon.